Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Niddah 18mTalmud. We begin 8 lines from the top of the Amud. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. This pertains to yesterday's discussion. We learned that if an Isha discovers Dam in an area where it's an unknown, it could have come from the womb, which produces Dam Niddah. It could have come from elsewhere, from the Aliyah, from the upper area, which produces Dam, which is Tar. Which way do we go? So back at the Mishnah, on Yudayim Beis, the Mishnah closes with a statement as follows: Nimtza b'proizdar, the Dam was discovered in this canal, which could have been sourced from either direction. Could have been from upstairs, which is Tar. Could have been from the Makar, which is Tamei. Sefekai Tamei. This type of uncertainty is stamped as Tamei. Why? Because we presume that, look, most likely, most blood comes from the Makar. So the Roiv factor will override even the fact that she had a Cheskas Tahara. That's a big Chiddush. She had a status of Tahar up until now. So why not just maintain that status? No, Lefi Shechaskas min HaMakar, it's presumed to come from the Makar. Most Dam comes from there. We have to assume it's from there. Says Rabbi Yechanan, this isn't the only time in Shas where Ra'iv will trump Chazaka. In fact, I can list you 3 times where Chacham adopted the Ra'iv element and treated it like a Vade, as if we know for sure. And it overrides all other opposition, whether there's a Chazaka against that or the Ra'iv overrides. Which 3? Makar, our discussion, Shilya and Chaticha. Makar, that's Hadamar, that's what we're talking about the last couple of days. Shilya, what's that? The Snan. We have a Mishnah. Shilya b'bayis, we discover an embryonic sac in the house. Now, the sac is not a fetus, it's not an offspring. So there's no tumah coming from it. Habayis tamei. Still, all items under the same roof are tamei. Not because the shilya itself is a vlad that conveys tumah upon its passing, rather because the shilya itself is presumed to contain a vlad. Most times, the sac contains some sort of fetus, which will now convey tumah after its passing. Reb Shimon Omer, even so, there's no issue because whatever was in there dissolved and liquefied and became nullified in other materials that were present. The blood dissolved before it emerged. So according to Tanakama, there's tumah because of Ra'iv. Most shilya have a vlad, and we give it definite tumah status. 3rd item is chaticha. This pertains to the tumas leda that an isha experiences post-birth, provided it's a proper fetus, properly formed, which has potential to develop further and actually live. The Sanya, Amapelas Yad Chatuch. Now you don't see a fully formed anything, you just see a hand. Chatucha, it does convey the impression of a hand. It has the detailed, has the configuration, has the fingers. Chatucha, likewise, a leg, which seems formed like a proper leg. What shall we assume? It's coming from a proper fetus, in which case, imo itmei leida, it's considered like she gave birth, like she discharged a proper fetus, and she has tumas leida. The answer is yes. So imo itmei leida, we don't speculate that maybe it was sourced in a guf atam, some sort of deformed entity, which does not trigger tumas leida, because most times, if you see a properly formed limb, it's probably sourced, probably came off a proper fetus. So in these 3 cases, we find that the Ra'iv element trumps everything else. It goes against the Chazaka, all kinds of, because Ra'iv determines status. Asks the Gemara, are these the only 3 examples that Ra'iv determines its status? There's no more. What about the classic story with the 9 stores? The Sanya, Teisha Chanuyos. So you walk into town, and there are 9 stores kulon meichreis basar shchut, selling kosher meat. V'achas meicheres basar nevela. There's one for the goyim selling nevela meat. And he purchased meat from one store, and he can't remember which one. Lokach ma'achas man. He can't recall meiz men lokach, where he purchased his meat. In this case, you would think, well, right, more chances that he bought kosher. No, sveika asr. This uncertainty stays asr. And the reason is because Rashi says, kol kavua, when something is established in its element and its place, it's separate. Each store is separate and distinct. You can't consider all the stores as just elements in the same equation. They don't connect to each other as separate entities. And since his uncertainty relates to his association with one of those establishments, his question wasn't, I found it in the street, I don't know where. That's the next story. He went over to an established entity, purchased meat from there. And he can't recall it. Was it this one? Was it the other? So each one's separate and distinct with respect to this type of uncertainty. So it's like a 50-50 chance. Sveika also, you got to go l'chumrah. Uvenimtza, however, if he finds a piece of meat in the street, here's just a question of the status of the meat itself. Now, more chances that it came from the kosher stores. Here we can say, Alecha Charav. Follow the majority element. That's called pirish. Rashi says, called the pirish, when something was separated from a broader, equation. You found it separate. Miruba pirish, you can assume it came from the more pronounced element of that equation. 9 out of 10 are kosher, we assume it's kosher. Okay, so here's another example. Raiv determines status. So why wasn't this on Rabbi Yechon's list? Oh, Tumah Kamrina, we're speaking about Tumah questions. Isur like Kamrina, we're not discussing questions of kashrus and Isur. So you're right, but it's on a different category. Vayika, really, okay, but in Tumah as well, I'll find you another case. Teshat Svardim, Sheretz Echad Menehem. A pile of dead creatures, 9 are frogs, which don't convey Tumah, and there's a lizard which does convey Tumah. He knows he touched one, not sure which one. No, doesn't know which one he touched. So it depends where we're standing. In a private area, when there's a suffix tumah, we learned this from Saita, you have to assume that he yutameh. But it's just Rambam out in the street, yutar. And again, because, as Rashi explains, this is like the fellow who purchased from a store, not sure which one. So he has to relate to an established entity. Rashi says, Sheretz kavua beineim havale k'mechza mechza. It's a pile. Each one has its own distinctness in that pile. In which case, since you don't know which one you touched in that pile, it's a 50-50 chance. You can't say, well, most likely I touched. No, each one is separate and distinct, and there's no majority element to work with. But if one of these creatures had separated from the bunch, and somebody there touched it, now he's not sure. What was it that he touched? What was the item that separated from the bunch? So here it's like the meat found in the street. 9 out of 10 chances is that it's kosher meat. Here as well, 9 out of 10 chances are that it's something which doesn't convey tumah. So if it's a pile, it's considered kavua in its place, and you can't say, well, most likely, most chances. No, each one has its own chashiva. It's called kavua, and it's a 50-50 chance. But if it's separated from the bunch, it loses that distinctness, and you follow the Raiv. Okay, so Raiv determines status. Why isn't this on Rabbi Yechon's list? You're right, but Tumah Disha Kamrina. Rabbi Yechon is just listing cases of Tumah that relates to a woman. Tumas Niddah, Tumas Leida. Tumah Ba'alma, general, Tumah issues, like Amrinan, was not on my list. Vayikahad Amar B'Shoma Levi. What about this case, which is an Isha Tumah issue? Avar Banar V'Pila. A woman passed through the river and she had discharged something inside the water, and we don't know what it is. Rashi says on the top line, V'Nyu Du'am Vlad. We don't know if it's a valid Vlad, which would trigger Tumas Leida, or whether it was just some sort of, discharge which doesn't qualify for tumas later. Mavia korban b'nechal. So we say, look, most likely, most women give birth to properly formed fetuses, somewhat developed fetuses, which trigger tumas later. So she brings a korban, the bird, the chatas oif, and the kohen eats it without any qualms. Halech achar roiv nashim, follow the majority of women. For roiv nashim, vlad ma'al yoldan. Most likely, women give birth to proper vlads. I don't say it's just some unidentifiable material or whatever. It's a fetus. So here's number 4. Why isn't this on Rabbi Yechanan's list? Masnisin kamrina shmaisel kamrina. The answer is, Rabbi Yechanan would say, look, I'm quoting halachas that were related in Mishnayos, and a Mishnah and a Brisa, but this is an Amoira speaking. So as true as it is, but it's in a different category. Asks the Gemara, but we find that this very halacha was actually supported by a Brisa as well. So it really is Brisa related and should belong on our list. V'ki Asar Rabban, when he came Amar, he says, Masif. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Chanina Toya. Rabbi Yisrael asked a kasha on this halacha with the river from a Mishnah regarding a Toya, a woman who is not sure what she's holding in her mouth. I'm not sure what he meant to ask, and Rashi relates to the Gemara back in later on in the Chav Tes. In any case, there was some back and forth. He's not sure what the question was. Now, we assume my lav. Assumingly, what he meant to say is, Loi Tiyufta, it's not really a kasha, actually, Elasiyata. The Mishnah there is actually going to support, the Brisa is going to support Rabbi Shmuel Levi's halacha of the woman passing through the river. So here you see that it's associated with the Brisa and it should be on Rabbi Yechanan's list. Loi, no. Dilma Loi Tiyufta, Elasiyata. Maybe what he meant to say is it's not a kasha, but it's not a support either. So, we're back to square one. It's Rabbi Shmuel Levi speaking. It's an Amoira. It's not on our list. Now, when Rabbi Yechanan or any Amoira gets up and presents, lists, it's not just, to amuse us. There is some sort of lesson there. These and not others. Limutimai. So what's not included on the list? What was omitted? Because this principle would not apply there. Perhaps Rabbi Yechanan meant to exclude a case where there's a roiv and there's a chazaka bahadei. In this case, Rashi says bahadei means against it. So on the one hand, you have a roiv telling you, one thing. On the other side of the scale, you have a chazaka against it. So was his point that in that type of case, you can't rule definitively based on the roiv. So even though there's an issue of truma, of tumah, you can't know for sure that she's tameh. If there was truma involved, you can't burn it. Is that what Rabbi Yechanan? Is that what he meant to say? That in the case where there's roiv against the chazaka, you can't just go with the roiv. And by the way, Taisus asks, but in these 3 cases just discussed, here too there's a roiv versus a chazaka. And still, we say it's vadai. Taisus makes a distinction. He says, and these 3 that we just discussed, it's a roiv gomer. It's a definite roiv. It's a high stakes roiv, high percentage roiv. It's an absolute roiv. As opposed to the next story in the Gemara with the children, the toddler, does he play with creatures, with the guard? That's in percentages, yeah, it's 51%. For example, but it's not an overwhelming roiv. It's not a roiv gomer. It doesn't have the same, it's not like 99.9. So in that case, the Gemara is suggesting, although it is a roiv, but since it's not an absolute roiv, and it's also being opposed by a chazaka, so maybe you can't adopt, the roiv all the way to burn truma on account of that roiv. Is that what he meant to say? Says the Gemara. But that's old news. Rabbi Yechanan himself already taught us that point elsewhere. Rabbi Yechanan taught it us elsewhere. It's not. We have the story. Tinoik of a toddler standing beside the mother's dough. He's making dough for challah, for Shabbos, and the child's there, batzak biyada, and you see a glob of dough in his hand. What's the status of the batter? Rabbi Mitar, According to Rav Meir, it's okay. Chacham say it's presumed tameh. Why? Typically, a toddler is jumping around and he's metapech, he's tapping, he's shrotzim, he's in the garbage, he's touching all kinds of... And he would have touched something tameh. And now, when he came over and sampled the batter, he was metameh the whole batter. Okay, so that's the chacham. V'amrinan, and the question was asked, my time of the Rav Meir, so why does Rav Meir say it's okay? The answer is Kasava, he holds, look, you have to look at the broader picture. Look at the full equation. Roiv tenoik is metameh. True. Most kids are playing around with the shrotzim and presumed to be tameh. But umiyut ein metameh. There is a small percentage of kids who don't do that. More, laid back type. So you have a small percentage in favor. Plus, let's remember, the dough has a cheskas tahara. It was tahara until this point. So let's combine these two elements and team up against the rave. Combine the miyut with the chazaka, and that cracks a hole in the rave. And that puts the rave at disadvantage. It weakens the rave. So that's why according to Rav Meir, the dough is presumed to be tar. V'rabbanan, they respond, hold it. Miyuta. Come on, let's say dummy. We don't reckon with miyut versus a rave. Big machlekes, Rav Meir holds that always choshesh l'miyut. We have to be concerned even about a miyut. Rabbanan say a miyut is obsolete relative to a rave. So what are we left with? We have a rave. Forget about the miyut. You have a rave versus chazak. Rave says, well, most kids are playing with the garbage, they're metameh. You have chazaka of the dough, which had been tar until now. Let's assume it maintained that status. So it's a rave versus a chazaka. For Ruba chazaka, who wins? Ruba Adaf, the rave wins. Okay, so the rave wins. What now? The dough has to be assumed as tameh, but all the way, Vamar Shlakish, yup, Mishum B'Yesha Zui chazaka. This assumption, this rave, that the dough became tameh, is so strong, even if it's truma, you burn it. Rabbi Yechon Amar no. Although the Rav says it should be tummy, but not to the point that we know for sure that we're going to burn truma based on this conclusion. So Rabbi Yechon himself already told us that even though there's a Rav, it doesn't take us all the way to town. So back to our question. Rabbi Yechon presented that list of 3. What was he coming to rule out? Oh, we have another candidate. There's another story which relates to a rave. And the point was that over there, despite the rave element, you're not going to conclude conclusively to the point of burning truma. The stan, pelas chatich. An isha discharges this solid mass. Now we're meant to know that an isha can become tummy by experiencing dam. That's tumas nida or tumas ziva. Then we have tumas later, provided she birthed something which has validity, halachic validity. But now it's a solid mass, like a flesh. Rashi says, B'loi tzura has no formation. It doesn't look like a fetus. Doesn't. So she's certainly not going to be tummy as a yoledis. Doesn't qualify as a vlad. But what about dam nida? Okay, neshima dam tmei v'mlav torah. If there's dam alongside it, fine. She's nida. Otherwise, she's torah. Because the chatich itself is not considered dam. That's the Chachamim's opinion. Rabbi Daimer, no. Whether or not there's dam alongside, she's tummy. You know why? Because this glob itself qualifies as dam nida. It's dam which sort of congealed. It took on a solid form. Rabbi only applied tumah when the solid mass presents as one of those 4 types of red that we'll discuss by the Hashem in the next Mishnah, which qualify as the proper color of dam nida, which I'm a tamid isha, despite the fact that it's in solid form. Aval shel shar minei damim torah, but if it has a different color, it's orange, it's yellow. Which, if it would be liquid, it would not be dam nida. Likewise, in solid form, it doesn't have dam nida status either. Rabbi Yechon Amar, he had a different approach. Shel arba minei dam dimer kol tmeya. Even Rabbanan would agree of this mass has those qualifying colors, those 4 qualifying, types of reds, of course, all agree it's tamei because it's dam nida in a solid form. V'shel sha'ar minei damim v'akol tahira. On the other hand, if it's off colors, yellow, whatever, all agree it's tar. Lo nechal kol b'shei pila. Ve'enu yadas my pila. Meaning, if it's definitely red, all agree this is dam nida in a solid form. If it's purple, green, all agree it's tar. Question is, if she discharged and she doesn't know, she can't find it, it's gone, before we had a chance to take a look. Shall we assume? Most likely it was dam nida, was red. Or do we say maybe not? Rabbi Dasavar Zilbos Hariv Chatiches followed the majority element. Hariv Chatiches Shel Arba Minei Dam Mahavyan. We know for a fact that most of these things are comprised of qualifying colors, and therefore she's tamei. For Rabbanan Savri Zilbas Hariv Chatiches Lamrim, we don't go with the Rav. They hold that. Rashi says they hold that. Who says that most chatiches are comprised of material presenting these, 4 colors of red? Who says it was a qualifying red? And therefore she's not tamei nida. Explains Rashi. That's what Rabbi Yechon was teaching us. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that she's tamei nida, but don't think it's a vadai. It's not definite. There's a strong chance that she's tamei. We have to assume so. But after all, it is just a suffix. Perhaps it's not a 99.9. It's not a rave gomer. It's a bit more than 50%, but it's not an overwhelming rave. In which case, it still remains somewhat of a suffix. And if she touches truma, you can't burn the truma. You leave it in limbo. You don't eat. You don't burn, etc. Okay, pretty short daf. We had Rabbi Yechanan's list of 3 makaimis with Chachamim adopted the rave all the way. And the Gemara explained that it was a list limited to questions of Tumah, more specifically Tumah of an Isha. So the 3 cases were the Makar, that's the dam that was found, and presumed to have come from the Makar. We have the Shulya, which is presumed to have contained a Vlad, and the Mampelas Yad Chatucha, which is presumed to have come from a proper Guf, in which case she's Tamei Tumas Leda. What was specifically left off the list? That was the last case of the Chaticha here, that she was Mel Chaticha, where even according to Yehuda, we assume that it's comprised of an Amnina, not to the point that we are Vadai, and not to the point that we're going to burn Truma. Where else do we find that Roiv determines status? Definitively. We have the case of the meat found in the street. 9 stores are kosher, it's presumed to be kosher. We have the creature separating from the bunch. Since most of them were tar, it's also considered tar. We find the case of the Isha through the river there. We presume that she discharged something which has blood status, and she is tamei. We have the story about the tinoik with the dough, where Rameir says tar because he teams up the miut with the chazaka versus the roiv. Rabbanan say no, miut has nothing to say relative to a roiv. It's just because we have a roiv versus a chazaka, in which case, according to Rabbi Yechanan, all of the roiv would carry the day, but not to the point that it's vadai, in which case the truma will be left in limbo without burning. Okay, all the best to you, and atzlacha.